Hello and welcome. My name is Tyler Hemingway, and today I'm going to talk to you about the trifecta for game designers and developers, and what it's needed to make sure a game gets balanced perfectly in the design phase. Now, the three key elements are good, cheap, and fast. Now, you can only pick two of these, and the third one will end up being its downfall. So let's start with fast and good. Now, these two are more for your ambitious goals, and what you're doing is you're going to set time, and this typically resolves in setting tight deadlines. Now, this is not going to be cheap, as you want a good product or a good game that it comes out fast and quickly. So you use your extra resources for new members, for your team, better art, and different things like that to help develop your game throughout. Now, to make a good and cheap game, it's going to take a lot longer, so you won't have that fast speed as everyone else. And this falls into the category like me and other indie developers who want to develop their own apps typically, which takes more time throughout the planning process as well as going into prototyping, which I'll talk about later. And now these people take their time to make a good and effective product such as apps on the App Store. And lastly, we have cheap and fast. Now this, you're definitely sacrificing quality, as you want to get something cheap and as fast as possible just to get out there. So you're losing that quality and that good process of the development and design phase. Now let me ask you a question. How long does it typically take a woman to give birth? Right, probably about 9 months. Now, how long will it take 9 women to give birth? It won't be 1 month, it'll still be 9 months. So some things simply have a certain pace that has to be done, and it can't be changed. Now that you know you have to pick two, now's the time where you decide which two do you want to put more effort in while producing and designing your game. But now you don't always have to keep that mentality throughout the whole thing, as there's different stages in making a game, such as the prototyping stage or the pre-processing, where you first go through, you plan out all your ideas. This typically you want to take more time to get your ideas well set and polished. Then when you go to a prototyping stage, there's different types, such as using paper models, where you plan out the game so you can test game mechanics and how each piece moves, or different stats as well. Now with these stages, it can change from each production stage. In resulting, when you're finally coding the game, that's probably going where you really decide to put a lot of your efforts into coding, art assets, and then it also has a backwards effect, as if it can be cheap, but if you're not getting enough money, you're going to have to make the game cheaper and go for a better and faster product. So it all depends on resources and funding as well in the design and development process. Flip side, you could go in the complete opposite direction and have a clunky, slow, and expensive game. So now to avoid this, you want to focus on certain topics, such as those can be on character creation and designing your character when you first get into a game, which really can immerse a player and bring them in. As well with just character creation, you're going to want to focus on a core game loop. Now the loop is the repeatable source in the game, and you're going to want that to be easily understood and have a balance and flows. Like if you go and you die, you restart. This is where most of your focus and your time should probably go. So while you're following these 3 steps of trying to work out whether it should be a fast, a cheap, or a good game, you want to see where you want to spend most of your time and try to get that overall balance. I would recommend going into the core game loop. This is the fundamentals of how the game is played, and it should be built on building pillars, as it's called, where you have your base structure, and then you have these pillars that hold and support the game, which will lead into your final product. Here are some images, this one being Pokemon, where it's a good game and it's fairly cheap for the cost, but it's typically a slower delivery, typically having a release every year, while a more slower indie developed game would take a lot longer. Lastly, I want you to remember that you should pick two, whether it be good, fast, or cheap. Now, remember also, there can be different phases in planning, so you want to choose a planning phase on how you can play each game or develop it, and then from there go on which element should you focus on fast. Do you want to get the design out there so you can start coding, and then later you can work on ideas? And so I just want to leave you, keep everything in mind that I talked to you about this trifecta, and how each thing has its pros and cons. And I hope forward to hearing from you. Below, if you have any questions, feel free to like the video, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you for watching.